Welcome to our meeting tonight. Thank you for joining us. We will get started with our roll call. Connie, will you please call the roll?
Adamson.
Here.
Gray.
Here.
Cheatham.
Here.
Lurick.
Here.
Ortega.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
Glad.
Okay, we will now have the Pledge of Allegiance, so please stand for that and then remain standing after the pledge for our invocation, which will be offered by Karen Peace of the Baha'i Faith.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is a prayer for America. O thou kind Lord, this gathering is turning to thee. These hearts are radiant with thy love. These minds and spirits are exhilarated by the message of thy glad tidings. O God, let this American democracy become glorious in spiritual degrees, even as it has aspired to material degrees, and render this just government victorious. Confirm this revered nation to upraise the standard of the oneness of humanity, to promulgate the most great peace, to become thereby most glorious and praiseworthy among all the nations of the world. O God, this American nation is worthy of thy favors and is deserving of thy mercy. Make it precious and near to thee through thy bounty and bestowal.
Thank you very much. Okay, agenda item number 3 is our consent agenda. The following business items may be approved by one motion and a vote. If any one member of the council so desires, any matter listed can be moved to a separate agenda item. A, minutes. Council may wish to waive the oral reading of the minutes and approve the minutes from the clarification and regular council meetings of February 20, 2020 and March 5th, 2020, February 25th, 2020, Joint Cities Bannock County School District 25 Idaho State University meeting, and the March 5th, 2020 City Council ICRIMP training. B, Treasurer's Report. Council may wish to consider the Treasurer's Report for February showing cash and investments as of February 29th, 2020. And C, Human Relations Advisory Committee reappointment. Council may wish to confirm the mayor's reappointment of Terry Brooks to continue his service as a member of the Human Relations Advisory Committee. Mr. Brooks' term will begin March 22nd, 2020 and will expire March 22nd, 2024.
Madam President,
Yes.
I would move for approval of agenda item number 3, the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion by Cheatham and a second by Lurick. Connie, will you please call the roll?
Cheatham.
Yes.
Lurick.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Ortega.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Adamson.
Yes. Agenda item number 4 is our communications and proclamations. We do not have any proclamations today. I did want to announce that Mayor Blad is not with us tonight. He is at home because he had some necessary travel, and so he is trying to be a good example in the community of keeping himself in, what's the term?
Shelter in place.
Yeah.
Self-isolation.
In isolation, yes. So we just want to reaffirm to anyone watching, he does not have any symptoms of COVID-19. He's just trying to be a good example and not put anyone at risk potentially. Okay. Agenda item 4.1 is a resolution, declaration of local disaster emergency. Council may wish to adopt a resolution declaring a local disaster emergency in accordance with Idaho Code 46-1011. Councilmember Lurick.
Madam President, I move that we adopt the resolution declaring a local disaster emergency in accordance with Idaho Code 46-1011.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Lurick and a second by Stevens. Connie, will you please call the roll?
Lurick.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Cheatham.
Yes.
Ortega.
Yes.
Adamson.
Yes.
Opposed.
Agenda item number 5 is our calendar review. Council may wish to take this opportunity to inform other council members of upcoming meetings and events that should be called to their attention. Right now, we have scheduled on April 2nd our 5:30 clarification meeting and our 6 p.m. regular city council meeting. On April 9th, we have our 9 a.m. work session. Other reminders, we have the annual spring cleanup at the city cemetery beginning on March 30th. Crews will remove and discard all flowers and decorations. Citizens are asked to remove decorations that they have placed on a cemetery space if they wish to avoid disposal of the item by staff. Cleanup is expected to continue through the end of April. Compost Happens Yard Waste Only composting program begins April 6th and continues through the last week of November. Yard waste carts will be picked up on the same day as your regular collection day. For more information, contact the sanitation department. We would also like to announce the city temporary closures and cancellations due to COVID-19. The Community Rec Center remains closed until March 28th, at which time opening of the center will be reevaluated. The Marshall Public Library is closed until further notice. Library employees will be available by phone 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Cemetery offices are closed through March 29th. Cemetery employees will be available by phone. The Zoo Education Building office is closed through March 29th. Staff will be available by phone. And the 2020 Portneuf Valley Environmental Fair has been canceled. Also, as a reminder, right now we have limited access to City Hall, and we encourage citizens to utilize our city website and to contact departments by phone or email if possible. Okay. Agenda item number 6 is a public hearing for vacation of right-of-way north shoulder of Hildreth Road. This time has been set aside for the council to hear comments from the public regarding a request by Thomas Katsilimedes to vacate the public's interest in the right-of-way of the north shoulder of Hildreth Road between Interstate 15 and Diamondback Lane.
Declare the public hearing open.
Okay. I declare the public hearing open. Okay. Council, has anyone had any ex parte contact on this matter?
No.
Okay. Is the applicant here?
Nope.
I do not see him. Okay. Well, then we will ask staff to come forward and give their presentation.
Good evening, President Adamson and City Council members. Merrill Quell, the Public Works Engineer for the City of Pocatello. The request before you is for the vacation of approximately 14,300 square feet of right-of-way located on the northwesterly side of Hildreth Road. The application was submitted by Thomas J. Katsilimedes. Public Works staff reviewed the request and recommends denial. In 1960, the Idaho Transportation Department constructed the interstate system through Pocatello known as I-15 today. The right-of-way for Hildreth Road was acquired during this project and was constructed as we know it today. Hildreth Road project started at the old Highway 30 that we know now as South 5th and headed westerly in a direction. It started with 80-foot wide right-of-way for about 500 feet going west. From there, it tapered for the 160 feet approximately to 100-foot wide, and then from that point, it continued westerly to I-15 right-of-way at 100-foot wide. So the right-of-way and was acquired, and the width there was for the construction, future widening, and maintenance of the tunnel that goes underneath I-15 at Hildreth. Staff does not agree with the statement from the applicant that this vacation is expedient for the public. The current slope has natural vegetation with gravel and rock material. The slope is stable and does not show evidence of any erodible issues. Vacation of the right-of-way will not stop the loitering as stated. This will need to be addressed by other methods. If the right-of-way is vacated, damages for the city or public entities that could occur would be buying the right-of-way back in the future for unseen maintenance issues or for future widening of the road. And that is the biggest part of there, is that the project has already purchased this right-of-way for this purpose, and if vacated in the future, we may be purchasing it back at a higher rate, or maybe 3 times as much as we did before. The property owner within 300-foot radiuses was informed of the right-of-way vacation request by certified mail. Written response was received back, and enjoying property owner, the school district 25, is in opposition to the request of the vacation of the right-of-way also. Notice was sent out to numerous city departments, representatives, and public agency for comment. In conclusion, the Public Works Department are recommending denial of the request and finds that said request is not in the best interest of the public. We did have a records request that was submitted, but there has been no other information or documents provided at this time. And I noticed that Mr. Caselmidas did show up, so he is here. So that concludes my presentation, pending any questions that you might have.
Does anyone have a question for staff at this time?
What was the document request for?
The requesting was for emails that pertaining to, that I had received pertaining to this this request, this application.
From the neighboring property owners, or I mean, is that what the main?
The request
bulk of
was
email
from
was
the
from?
applicant.
But I mean, the emails were regarding conversations with the neighboring
Yes,
property
and
owners.
those exact emails are in the application, or in your staff, in the
Right.
staff report too.
Okay. Any further questions for staff? Okay, thank you. Mr. Castellamides, would you like to come forward and give your presentation? You
Good
have 10
evening.
minutes for this presentation.
I'm sorry, how much?
You have 10 minutes for this
10 minutes,
presentation.
so I don't think I'll need that much,
Okay.
but thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to present to the council. Thank you, Madam Acting Chair, I guess our chair, yeah, and council members. My name is Tom Caselmides. I'm the applicant for the proposed vacation of a portion of Hildreth Road next to the property that I own on the corner of Hildreth and South Fifth. It's a 10-acre parcel. We've had it closed with a fence for a couple of years. We have a compound in there, and we have a couple of businesses operating in and out of there. We want to expand the business operations, and we have some items stored there, and there'll be other items stored there that are of high value. A couple of years ago, there was a fire that was started, we believe, by a passing vehicle on I-15, and that was noted in the newspaper. I wasn't aware of it until afterwards and was told about it. And and I think there was a fire as recently as January just down the road from us at a fencing business. So we're concerned about keeping fire hazards down. What I'm proposing to vacate is just the slope area to the right, or I guess to the north of the road surface, past the shoulder of the road, just where the steep incline begins. And I don't know if you were able to review all the materials, but we're looking just at the slope area. And I didn't get a lot of input from the city folks. I did stop, from staff. I did stop in on 3 occasions to meet with Mr. Quayle. He was in a couple of meetings or out the days I stopped in. I did speak to Mr. Evans in the surveyor's office. He said that he'd been contacted by Mr. Quayle regarding where this was exactly at. And he plotted it for him and confirmed that that's all we were talking about there, not any part of the road surface or traveled area of Hildreth Road. One of the concerns we have is we have students that congregate, well, we presume they're students that congregate in the underpass there at Hildreth Road underneath I-15, and that is a spot that's graffitied off, and we've noticed a lot of trash in the area over many, many years since the school has been open. And I don't want to point fingers, but I think it may be coming from some of the folks that frequent the school. So coupled with the fire concerns and the weed growth on the steep slope, we thought it would be in our best interest to try to control the activities on that slope. So getting back to talking to Mr. Quayle, I did speak to Mr. Lewis a couple of times, and he said that Mr. Quayle had some questions. I did finally email and called. I didn't get a return call either time, but I did send a couple of emails saying that if there are concerns, I'd like to discuss them. And apparently one of the concerns was, where does the city plow the snow or blow the snow on it? And I said, I have no trouble whatsoever, and I don't know if you have the emails in your packet, I wasn't able to see that in there. But I said I could grant an easement contemporaneously or simultaneously with the vacation of the road back to the city to do whatever the city needs to do, throw snow, whatever they'd like to do, or to have that reserved by the city as part of the vacation. Legally, I don't know how that works. You have Mr. Johnson here, the city attorney, and he might be able to address that. We have no trouble allowing the city to come in. We thought about redoing the surface of that hillside with a non-erosive material, something that is aesthetically pleasing, but also to reduce the fire hazard of something starting near the road or down below, climbing up the hill and then getting on into our area there. The other thing is people climb up just out of curiosity on that hillside, and that's a liability, I think, for the city to maintain that and just have who knows who climbing up the hill with the risk of falling. Part of that area, that steep slope, there is a lava outcrop from the lava flow that's below the surface of the soils there, and it's a bit rocky and potentially dangerous. So I have reviewed the opposition statements from ITD. That's all I could really find, and also from the school district. The school district was concerned with the school bus turnaround. As far as I know, the school buses don't drive off the shoulder of the road near our property. They stay on the road, they make the left-hand turn into what I think is called Diamondback there, where the bus turnaround is to the south. There really shouldn't be a concern there. And in fact, we can reduce the size or the length, I guess if you want to call it, of the proposed area to be vacated and go past where the school buses turn in and out of the district's property there. ITD's concern was if the road is ever expanded for interchange or this or that. Well, I-15 was constructed in that location. I think it opened in about 1964, and it had been under construction since 1963. So we're talking over 55 years now that there hasn't been any impetus to build an interchange there or expand that road. The reduction that we're talking about when you move, take the slope out of it, still leaves an 80-foot wide right-of-way there for the city and for public thoroughfares. So we don't think it's that big of a concern. And of course, I don't think there would be a cost to the city, because if that were ever expanded, that would likely be a federal highway project operation. And that would probably be picked up by ITD if they needed to expand that or be part of an interchange construction. So I don't think the cost issue is necessary for really consideration. So I'm open to any questions any of the council members may have.
Council, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I do. On your first statement here, the petitioner must provide specific responses. Describe why the requested vacation is expedient for the public good. It allows the adjacent property owner to maintain the erodible slope from the shoulder and to minimize the risk of students from Century High School and others from loitering in a dangerous road area. So I didn't know that we had a prohibition on you maintaining it. even if it's public property, because sidewalks are supposed to be maintained.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to talk to me about this. So I don't know that you're excluded from cutting weeds if that's a fire concern or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
Actually, that did happen, Councilman Bray, in a different context. It was snow removal on a city street, in a city sidewalk, that where snow was thrown onto the city street, and a gentleman was cited. That was out here on Willard Road not too long ago. And
but that's not maintaining the street.
yeah, well,
I understand that. What I'm saying is, if you've listed as primary concern the
Yeah.
potential of fire.
yeah.
I don't know that we have a prohibition about cutting weeds on a public shared right-of-way, so to speak, because we have some of those shared right-of-ways already. If they're not developed, I have to maintain a little place on my property, there's an easement on it,
Yeah,
and it falls under me.
yeah. Yeah, I don't think the ordinance is applicable to that area because there is no sidewalk.
Okay.
Yeah, so the ordinance only applies.
I was talking about
Yeah.
cleaning weeds up. That was your
Yeah,
concern.
I don't think that, if I were to do something or hire someone to do something there to do that, that's some potential liability for us. And so I don't want to take that risk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember Stevens.
So if I have the right picture in my head, and if there's still an 80-foot easement, right-of-way, whatever the correct word is, and then the slope starts, is that, I've been out in that area, but I
Yeah.
can't bring it up photographically. I guess I'm wondering why taking the slope out, unless you're planning to fence it off or something, why wouldn't whoever might be congregating in that area continue to congregate just lower down?
Yeah, they could, and I think the problem there is there won't be an area where it isn't just congregating there. They're there, and then they come up the hill. So we just don't want them coming up the hill or throwing something or a lit material that goes up. So I propose later on, if this is something that the city traffic department or anyone else who's involved, maybe having a barrier of some kind, either a fence or some other thing to keep people from coming up. The other concern is vandalism too. So, and you really can't monitor anything from the road when you're down on the road looking up. So yeah, that incline, I think it's about a 20 to 25 foot differential from the road surface right at the underpass or close to the underpass to where our fence is at up above.
Why is this particular situation different than virtually every other commercial property owner who stores valuable equipment in some kind of location where some nefarious member of the public could walk up and, I don't know, throw a Molotov cocktail over the fence? I'm having trouble understanding what is unique about this circumstance.
I would think it would be the numbers of people that frequent the area that shouldn't be there loitering in an underpass, and that's just unsafe, first of all. That underpass at Hildreth Road, it's very difficult to get two cars through at the same time. It's that narrow. And if you go through there, oftentimes you'll see the graffiti on the walls. It does get covered up periodically, but parts of it aren't. So that tells me there's people there all the time. And I've gone through, we have operated a well nearby and gone through the tunnel, and there's people there. So it's an unsafe situation. So to make it more safe, the idea would be make it less attractive or reduce the ability for people to congregate there. And I think that's what we would be able to do by erecting a fence or some other barrier there, and that would just dissuade them from being there.
Thank you.
One other thing too is if they're climbing up the hill, they could slip, roll back down as traffic is coming through. That's a little bit different than other situations.
And how many times since Century High School has been out there has something similar to that type, or when was the last time, that there was a police call because someone standing under the underpass was, I mean, are we trying to solve a problem that exists, or are we trying to prevent a hypothetical problem that we don't currently have, I guess is my question.
Councilman Stevens, I can't speak to if the police have been called or anyone, or sheriff has been called or anything. I don't know that. I haven't called anyone personally, but I know we're ramping up the business operations. So I don't want it to become a problem, and now is the time to do it, so.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the applicant? Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay.
Could I ask a question of Chief Scheid?
Okay.
And my question, I guess, is pretty much the same, Chief, is, has there been, to your knowledge, is it a police problem? Is this area a problem for the police?
Chief Roger Scheid, Folksville Police Department. To my knowledge, we haven't been out there for some time. I'd have to go look at our records to see as far as any specific calls for service. I know that it goes down to the highway pond, and
Right.
We did have some issues in the highway pond for a short period of time, but I can't think of anything in the most recent past where we've had incidents down there, but I'd have to go look.
I was thinking there was an incident, I was trying to remember, I think it was in the 80s with the highway pond. There was a protest, somebody putting some things in the highway, like barrels. I mean, it was a kind of protest to show that something could be done. And I've heard stories about that, but I haven't heard anything in a long time.
I know when Century first opened up, we had some issues down there, but we took care of those. But we work with the county. I can't think of it. I'd have to go look to see specific instances lately, but nothing stands out to mind.
So no fatalities or high-level serious injuries?
No,
that
nothing like that.
Pop to mind.
And that the underpass area there, that tunnel, I guess, is that full of graffiti? I mean, are there people hanging out down there, living down there?
No, there's not really a lot of space to hang out down there. There has been some spray paint graffiti on there. I mean, it does get covered up, but every once in a while it'll pop up and we'll clean it up. So
I mean, the tunnel's it's quite short, as
Yeah.
I recall. I mean, it's a car length and a half, maybe. Something like that.
So there's not enough room for anybody to be camping out or?
No, and it's tight.
No, I can't think of any calls for service that we've had where somebody was blocking the roadway there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Merrill has already indicated there was a email request. Has there been any other written correspondence that was submitted for the record?
No.
Okay. All right, we will now open it up for testimony. So if there is anyone here in support of the application, now is the time that you can come forward. Okay. Is there any testimony from someone uncommitted to the application? As a reminder, there's a 3-minute time limit.
Nikki Taysom, General Delivery, Pocatello, Idaho 83201. If it's a matter of making an improvement, I'm for that, because I know there's a lot of places where property that the city owns, it's not maintained, and there are weeds and garbage all the time, like around Oak Street before the Gould overpass. And so if it's a matter of somebody maybe taking the effort to clean something up and make it look nicer and be safer, because there are a lot of people that come off the railroad tracks. The students often go to places like that in terms of smoking or drug use, alcohol use. It does take place out at Century. And there are a lot of people who have no regard for fire safety anymore. And so that would be somebody that's taking a step to be a responsible citizen to make something better and take a load off of our tax dollars in the process. Thank you. So I approve it in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others uncommitted to the application? Okay. Any opposed to the application? Okay. Do you have anything additional that you would like to add, Mr. Cassidy?
I'll answer any more questions if anyone has any more questions.
Well, I do. Mr. Quayle, you know, one of his primary reason for opposing this is for recommending against it is that if something were to be needed to be expanded, then the taxpayers would have to buy that back from you, and you know, obviously it would not be at the 1963 rate. It would be at whatever current rate, and I think that's a concern, because right now the city owns it, and if we needed to do something, if the city needed to do something with it, I would hate to saddle the taxpayers with paying 2020 prices or 2025 prices when we got it at 1960 prices.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I can speak to that. A couple of things. Actually, the city didn't acquire jurisdiction of the road until not too long ago, and that was, I think, in about 1998 when there was an annexation. I think it was right around then, maybe 1999, annexation of that part of town. And I don't know if it included Hildreth Road or not at that point, but the city got that for free, actually, so the jurisdiction of the road. And if it's to be expanded in the future, I'm willing to do this right now and have, as part of the vacation agreement, grant a simultaneous option back to the city for a number of years, in case that happens, for the sum of $1 or $10, a nominal amount, to get that back if, in fact, an expansion is made to build an interchange. So that would eliminate all the concerns about settling with taxpayers, get it right back.
And that would be something, Jared, that, yeah, I mean, all of those kinds of things are in your...
Yeah, so land conveyance is a little more complicated than that for lots of good reasons. It all needs to be done legally and binding, in a way that's binding. So that's easy to say, but he also said that it would be just for purposes of an interchange. And there might be other reasons that we would want to acquire that back in the future. So something to consider there.
Okay, well, would you be willing to take out that exception for an interchange? If the city needed to acquire that back for whatever improvement the city needed to make, would you be willing to give it back to the city?
You know, if it were limited to not having the general public coming through, that would be fine. I can't think of a circumstance what that would be where the city would need something that isn't part of an interchange when there's already 80 feet there.
Jared?
And that's just the thing. I don't know what those might be either. It's not my area of expertise, but at this point, we have that property for whatever that need might become. And so it's hard to envision what every option or possibility might be in the future. But we've already talked, Merrill already mentioned, I'm not sure if it was before you were here or not, Tom, but snow placement for snow removal. And that's a need that we already have that we would have to work out an agreement with Mr. Katsoulides for if this were to be approved tonight. So that's another consideration.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I want to be clear, did you folks get copies of the email? Was that in the packet that I said I would gladly give up an easement for snow removal or utility lines or like that? Councilman Cheatham is nodding his head yes. I guess that's in the packet. But I did make that offer to do that either as a grant of an easement simultaneous with the vacation of the road, or the city can reserve that to itself for the same purpose. So I have no trouble with the snow being thrown on there. That's not really an issue for me. So that can be accomplished, no cost to the city, and still maintain the functionality of the street department and the road department and snow removal.
Okay.
It's just a question, I guess, for Jared. You know, these things that you're stating now, Mr. Katsoulides, how do we guarantee that? I mean, how do we make sure that, I mean, if we were going to approve something like this, I mean, are we going to have a document that specifies all of this and not limiting us to some specific purpose? Or, I mean,
Well, there's really two ways I can think of on the spot to do that, and that would be if the council were interested in granting the vacation, it would come with certain conditions, and those conditions would be retainers of interest for certain things. The other way to do it would be to do a simultaneous easement, as Mr. Katsimis mentioned, which is another document that runs with the property that's recorded and carries those rights and provisions the city would maintain as a part of this transfer. The problem with both of those options is that we would have to think of every eventuality that we might need, and I'm not sure that we could do that. I mean, discussions with engineering and public works and the utilities and everything, that might be possible. I just can't tell you that that's for sure a thing we can do.
I'm just not sure that we can think of everything that might come up in the future that we may need to have thought of.
Right. And not only us, but the other agencies and companies that we reached out to as a matter of course for any land use decision that involves right-of-way.
Thank you, Mr. Katsimis.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I declare the public hearing closed. Council, this item is before you. How do you wish to proceed?
I'm not ready to make a decision.
You got it. I'll make a motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Linda, were you going to?
Do you want?
Go ahead.
Okay. And we are making a decision now. We can.
You can either
Right.
continue deliberations or someone can make a motion.
Okay. I'm ready to make a motion. I move that we do not approve the vacation of the right-of-way north shoulder of Hildreth Road at this time.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Lurick and a second by Bray. Connie, will you?
Can we speak to that
yes.
for a second? The reason I'm supporting that, we have like 5 or 6 entities that's gotten back to us that said it's not in our interest or their interest for this to happen. And they have spoken, and we can't anticipate exactly what their reasoning was. They've detailed some of it, but it's real hard to read minds in every dimension. So that's where I'm coming from right now. And I'm just going to go with staff based on other entities also recommending denial.
And I would reiterate, I mean, that's my reason for making the motion too. I feel strongly that unless there is something presented that is really compelling for an exception, that we need to follow what our staff recommend. They are the experts on this, and the people that we've talked to, they're the ones who understand it fully, and they've all said that it is not in our best interest. The other part is what we just talked about. I don't see that we can anticipate every situation that might come up or every eventuality. So for those reasons, I just feel like this is not in our best interest right now.
And this has already been said, I mean, the preponderance of feedback was to deny. And overwhelmingly so. I think everyone but one, if I'm recalling. And again, as Councilman Bray said, I don't know at this moment every thought that went into their conclusion, but it seems clear that if the suggestion to deny was overwhelming as it was, that we should listen. We meaning the council.
Madam President?
Yes.
May I ask Mr. Katsimis another question?
No, it's over.
It's part of, if it's part of deliberation, then I think it would be okay.
I'm just wondering, Tom, if this is denied tonight, is that in any way going to inhibit your development of your land out there?
Yes, it will inhibit it.
In what way?
And again, we anticipate expanding a couple of businesses there and adding new businesses, and I think they'll shy away if they know that there is going to be traffic coming up and down that hillside, or potential traffic on the hillside, and they will find probably another place out of the city of Pocatello to go. Okay, so and I can't blame them for doing that. So.
But there's nothing that prohibits you from putting a fence up on your property line, is there?
that we already have a fence on our property line. The problem is people come up on the hill, they can be sitting there, do something, run back down the hill. There's no way to control that.
Okay.
'Cause
What type of fence is at the top?
it is a chain link. They also call it a cyclone fence. It's roughly 8 or 9 feet high. Yeah,
With a barbed wire top, as I remember.
correct. Yeah. So there's no way to monitor people coming up and down the hill, and that's why we want to keep them at the bottom of the hill instead of coming up. Thank you, Councilman Cheatham.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Yes.
I'm just wondering, not being an expert, but realizing that many sensitive properties use all kinds of surveillance as a deterrent, and lights and sirens and all kinds of things when they're faced with similar circumstances. And I'm wondering, again, what would make those deterrents not suitable in this circumstance, but make them suitable in other circumstances?
Is that a question for me? Because I'd be glad to address
It's gotta
that.
be.
Yes.
Okay. In the instance that deterrence doesn't work, then we have an incident which could be very devastating to the businesses that are planning to be there. That's the problem. So we'd want to minimize the opportunity for people to create mischief.
Okay, any other comments, council?
I personally would be willing to consider it if we could come up with a document, and I don't think that anybody can ever come up with every conceivable possible scenario, but within reason, I would be willing to consider this if we had a reasonable number of eventualities that could occur. So, that's me.
I did have a comment, which is that another thing we need to consider is the effect this may have on future situations. We may have other landowners or other businesses that would desire some of the city right of way, and we have to consider what
Setting a precedent, possibly.
potentially.
I think each of those, though, are individual. They should be considered individually.
Yes, that is true. Okay. All right, well, we have a motion by Lurick and a second by Bray. So if there's no further discussion, Connie, will you please call the roll?
Lurick,
Yes.
Bray,
Yes.
Cheatham,
No.
Ortega,
No.
Stevens,
Yes.
Adamson,
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 7 is a short plat, Mr. Mower subdivision. Chris Kelly, represented by Matt Baker of Summit Land Surveying, has submitted a short plat application to subdivide 2.39 acres into 2 lots. The general location of the property is 4105 Hawthorne Road. Councilor? Councilmember Lurick?
Go ahead. I move that we approve the short plat for the Mr. Mower subdivision. Application to subdivide 2.39 acres into 2 lots on Hawthorne Road.
Second.
We have a motion by Lurick and a second by Cheatham. Connie, will you please call the roll?
Lurick,
Yes.
Cheatham,
Yes.
Bray,
Yes.
Ortega,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Adamson.
Yes.
May I make another related, or motion related to this topic? I don't know.
To
Jared?
the subdivision?
Yes.
The item before you has been voted on, so I'm not sure what other motion would be relevant, but
Well, what I'm going back to our clarification question.
Oh, okay.
That I would like at some point in the not too distant future to discuss how we arrived at occupancy prior to to taking this action because I'm concerned that if we're not following our own procedures or our own ordinances or whatever, that I find that problematic. So I don't know how
And Councilwoman Steens, I understand where you're coming from.
Right.
I don't know the details of that myself. I
Right.
think that would be probably something that would be handled more at a
in the
staff level.
study session? or
I wouldn't even
whatever?
say necessarily a study session based
Okay.
on the individual nature of what you're asking.
Okay.
But certainly something that could be pursued by staff and get back to you on that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, council, based on my relationship with the applicant for agenda item number 8, I need to recuse myself, so I will at this time turn the meeting over to Council Member Bray for agenda item number 8. I'm recusing myself from voting and discussion.
Okay. Agenda item number 8, utility deposit exception request, Taylor. Council may wish to consider a request from Rebecca Taylor for an exception to city code requiring a $150 deposit for city utilities for new accounts. This is an action item. Ms. Taylor, do you want to?
Do you want to ask her to state her name?
Would you please state your name?
Yes, Rebecca Taylor.
And I think you have to also give us an address.
A full address?
No,
she's fine.
Okay.
We don't.
Thank you, City Council, for allowing me the opportunity to appear tonight, for listening to my concerns. As I said, my name is Rebecca Taylor, and I'm here tonight with concerns about the way that the utility billing department is their practice of charging deposits on all new accounts. I guess I should have maybe responded earlier, and I don't know the way that it's conveyed in the agenda is appropriate because I'm not asking for an exception to the code, and I guess that's the basis of my argument is that that's not what the code requires, is that there are $150 deposits charged on all new accounts, and so that's the basis of my concern tonight, and my request is a refund of the $150 that I was erroneously charged on the establishment of our account. I have been a longtime resident of Pocatello, not born, but certainly raised in Pocatello. As an individual, I've been a utility account holder since 2007. And how this all started was about 3 years ago, my family, we moved out of state to go to school. We maintained our home here, fully expecting to come back and live in Pocatello again. We had caretakers taking care of the home. And in about September of 2019, after graduation, we were planning to move back, and my husband had called the utility billing department to have the utilities transferred back into our name. He called me and said, oh, okay, I got that taken care of. Oh, by the way, they charged us a $150 deposit. I said, oh, there's no way. Call him back. I'm sure there's a waiver or something. You know, we haven't been charged a utility deposit in years. We should be able to resolve this. And he was told by the utility billing department that since October of 2016, there was a new policy that they were charging utility deposits of $150 on all new accounts. And so I was curious. I went online, did some research, went and pulled down the utility, the application for a utility account, and read on the top, all new accounts will be charged a $150 deposit. I said, well, that sucks. Okay, I don't like that. But did a little bit more research just to see where that was coming from, and went to the city code and could not find that language anywhere. And specifically, section 13.30.040B deals with fees and deposits. And it says specifically, relating to deposits, payment of a deposit may be required as determined by the utility billing director or his or her designee based upon credit reporting information. Okay, when I read that, may is an exception, not the rule. It doesn't say that it shall be charged based on, it just says it may be based on the pulling of credit. So I called the utility billing department and said, okay, well, did you pull my credit? Because if you had, I would be shocked if that information had indicated a need to charge me a deposit. I don't believe that I'm a credit risk to the city of Pocatello. And I was told that the city is not currently following that policy. It's not feasible. That was specifically what I was told, that the pulling of credit was not currently feasible, but they wanted to retain that language in the event that in the future they decided to start implementing that policy. I was not satisfied with that response because I don't think that a blanket charging of a deposit is appropriate based on the language of the code. So from there, I submitted I had some email correspondence with the mayor's office. I had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Jerry Johnson in the city attorney's office with more questions. So part of what Mr. Johnson had pointed to was a line in that same section of the code that says, the utility billing department shall collect fees for turning on water service on or off, for transferring accounts, and such other fees and deposits as set from time to time by resolution of the city council. So I requested a copy of a resolution, if it existed, that suggested that there was this policy of charging $150 deposit on all new accounts. I was provided with the resolution, resolution number 2019-7. This was, I believe, dated August 15th of 19. And I was provided with all the exhibits, specifically Exhibit V, which deals with the utility billing department fees. All this is to me is a fee schedule. There is nothing on this document. I can provide copies, but you all have access to the same information. There's nothing on this document that informs anything about the policy or the practice of charging utility deposits. It is just establishing rates. And so what I'm suggesting is, in the absence of a specific information on this resolution, you would have to go to the code, which specifically says that deposits may be charged based on the pulling of credit, which has not been done in my case, and it doesn't appear to be happening on any new accounts as well. So I think this may be a larger issue than my own issue. I'm only here tonight representing myself, requesting $150 back, but I'm indicating I think there may be a bigger issue here for all new account holders in the city of Pocatello. The other piece that was a little bit concerning. So after the language that deals with the charging of deposits, there's also additional information about certain exceptions to that policy, to the policy of charging deposits. There's two. There's one basically dealing with, if you have like a divorce situation or widower that wants to transfer an account into their own name, they don't charge a deposit. There's also a transfer exception. So if you move from one home in Pocatello to another home in Pocatello, they're not going to charge you a utility deposit in that situation either. In my communication with Mr. Johnson, he indicated, that there wasn't a blanket deposit requirement because of these exceptions, and that was a little confusing to me, because if you are charging $150, but with the exception of these exceptions, we're applying part of the code, but other parts of the code we're not applying. That feels very arbitrary and wholly inappropriate. If the language of the code is here and has been adopted by the city council, I would expect that the language would be applied and the instruction would be given to the different city departments that those policies and practices follow the code. The language that's currently in the application for utility service indicates that this utility service deposit of $150 is pursuant to Pocatello Municipal Code, and it is not. The code clearly and specifically deals with the charging of deposits may be required as determined by the utility billing director or his or her designee based upon credit reporting information. That is not being done. I have confirmed that with Cindy in utility billing and with others, with the mayor's office as well. What I'm requesting is a refund of $150 that I was charged on my account when I reestablished my account back in September of 2019. I've pulled a copy of my credit report, which is stellar. I have an excellent payment history with the city of Pocatello. I've back from 2007 all the way forward. City of Sandy, City of Provo. I can provide all that information to show that I am not a credit risk to the City of Pocatello. And as such, I don't believe, based on the language of the code, that the charging of a utility deposit of $150 in my case is appropriate, and I'm requesting a refund of that money.
Okay.
So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Cindy, would you like to come up and address?
Good evening. Council President
State your name.
Adamson / Bray, how's that? I'm city council members tonight. So, Cindy Robbins, Utility Billing Director. Do you have specific questions, or would you like me to?
Could you just give us a little history of how we arrived here?
Okay, sure. So prior to October 2016, we had some study session meetings regarding a deposit. And so at first we were looking whether we wanted to base this on credit. And we went through a lot that we were going to be adding more cost to people as we were trying to pull their credit. And we came up with, and then we have sliding scales of trying to decide with each credit report what kind of a rate we would be charging. Well, after several meetings, we decided that we also had the risk to the city. We were asked by the council, previous council, to look for areas where we were losing money. And during that time frame, I looked at how much money we are losing that we're writing off with our credit collections. We were upwards of $70,000 a year that we were losing. And so we had more discussions with the council. We decided we would either look at good credit or we would look at reducing the risk to the city. It was a decision made by the council that we would reduce the risk to the city because the risk is never known until the account finalizes. Lots of things happen. People have great credit all the time. They can pay us for 30 years, but at the end, we either have somebody may die, somebody gets sick, jobs are lost. Look at the virus right now, what it's doing to people. So we can never, ever know what a risk is. And so we decided, you decided, that we would use it as a way to reduce the risk to the city. We revisited this afterwards. We met up with you again in July of 2017. At this time, we had noticed a considerable difference in the amount of collections. And just a little note to say, in 2014, we had 17,000 being written off, 353 accounts. We reduced that by 72%. We wrote off 19,000 in the year 2018, reducing that down to 156 accounts. So that was the goal. And if that's changed, then council, you'll need to let me know. But that was the goal that was decided on at the time. So we went with reducing the risk. The language in the ordinance, I know that I know I did ask to have that one line removed because it is confusing in there. And it was from a council member to stay in there in case we went this route. But if you read the ordinance in its entirety, we do say that we're going to take a deposit. It is all for all new accounts, and it is going to remain now on the account until the account finalizes.
Well,
any questions?
Not for you, Cindy, but
Okay.
to Jared.
Yes.
Why would we put the May based on credit checks if we knew at that time we weren't going to be doing any credit checks? We were just trying to mitigate the loss to the city. We could have revisited the ordinance if at some point in time we decided to start doing credit checks, and then we could have added that on.
Great question.
Because my concern is if we refund this lady her money because of that skewy language, which a normal person, I would read it the same way she did. But my concern with refunding her money is that then we're going to have every account holder in Pocatello is going to be lining up to get their money back, and we can't afford to do that.
Yeah.
So
So that's a great question, and I told Ms. Taylor we had a great conversation a few months ago about this, and I admitted to her, and I admit it tonight, that language is somewhat tricky. It certainly is, and if you just read that sentence in that ordinance section, it does seem like that the only way we can charge that deposit is if the utility billing director chooses to run a credit check and makes that determination. As I told her then, and I'll tell the council tonight, reading the ordinance in its entirety, for me, changes the meaning of not only that sentence, but the whole intent of the ordinance, which is to charge that deposit on all accounts, except for the ones with the specific exception. Really what that sentence by itself does, I understand how it's being read, but I also read it to say that it gives us the option to use credit reporting as an indicator as to whether or not we should charge a deposit. It doesn't require us to use credit reporting and make the sole determination on a deposit on credit reporting. So I would be very interested in having another discussion at another meeting about some possible changes to the ordinance to make it more understandable for everybody. But I also believe that the ordinance as written does require a deposit to be paid by everybody except for the exceptions written into the ordinance. As far as your other concern about what would happen if we granted this exception tonight, I totally understand where Ms. Taylor's coming from. She's not necessarily asking for an exception. She's offering the ordinance doesn't support the action. Reasonable people can disagree, and we do disagree on that point. But if you were to grant this exception or to give the refund that's being requested, you would have the exact problem that you just described. It also would have some other results, specifically the amounts that we've been able to collect since we've started charging this deposit, or I'm sorry, the amounts we've written off have significantly reduced. And that has an impact on all ratepayers. It's part of the rate study, it's part of the calculation for charging those rates.
And I'm just for the record, I'm not opposed to the requirement of a deposit per se, but I think that language makes it very confusing. And I would, like you suggested, I would like to see another conversation
Certainly.
About changing the verbiage of that ordinance.
When language in an ordinance, any interpretation of a statute, when it's vague or not specific, and when it's ambiguous, you look at lots of things. You look at the context of that statement. You look at the past practice of the organization that enforces the ordinance. You look at the fee schedule, and that's how we looked at this. Quite honestly, when Ms. Taylor brought it to our attention, and we were aware of it, and Cindy was here before me and had some discussions about this with previous councils. I get where they're coming from, but in the whole context of the interpretation, I feel comfortable with where it's at, but I would also understand the need and the desire to clean it up a little bit.
I do, only because lawyers aren't the people reading that, and so I understand how you look at things very differently, but I'm just a Joe Blow, and when I read it, I just think that our ordinances should, as Chris is fond of saying, say what we mean and mean what we say. And so I would support revisiting this to discuss that, but I won't support a refund.
Can I?
I was going to ask Cindy a couple of questions. Cindy, if I remember correctly, the May was inserted because we were having people who were living in one house and actually buying or building another house, and they could have two accounts. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the May was inserted so that we wouldn't be charging them a deposit on the new account when they had a current account with us. That was one of the reasons for that, because it clearly said new accounts, they had two accounts, and it let us retire one account without having to charge them a deposit on the new account. I believe that was part of why May was inserted.
It is, and the other part of that was that if they didn't have one because they have had an account for years and never had a deposit on their account or to have them refunded at that point, we would not charge them moving into their new house. We grandfathered that part so that if they didn't have a deposit, we didn't charge them a deposit going to their new resident.
Linda?
And I was going to say, just to clarify, so what you have been doing since the previous council made the decision to focus on minimizing our risk, you have been across the board requiring that 150 on all accounts.
Yes.
So there hasn't, other than some of the two stated exceptions, that has been our policy since 2017.
October 2016.
16, okay. So I have a friend who had a situation recently where her spouse passed away, and the utility bill was in his name for many years, but she had been paying it, like the checks you receive were in her name. And yet, when he passed away and she established a new account because it had been in his name, she was charged the $150 fee. And so I was wondering, is that because it wasn't in her name. I mean, she was told it was a new account.
She, and actually have her give me a call, because what we do for surviving spouses, they do not pay a deposit. So where we did not have her on the account, she may not have been on the deed. If she came in and didn't say anything and signed it and we put it in just in her name, it would have been counted as a new account if she did not let us know that she was a surviving spouse. If she had everything changed over like the deed already.
And
so
I'm
in
not
that case,
sure whether she did or not.
Yeah,
But
please have her contact us, because that is absolutely, we say right in our ordinance on that one. Surviving spouses do not pay deposits.
even when it's not, like there wasn't a shared
We're really
account.
straying
or
They
anything like
don't
that.
have to be on
this
the
decision.
account. They're a surviving spouse, and as long as we know that, we're fine.
I'm just trying to understand the nature of the exceptions, and if we are applying this across the board fairly, it seems like we are. so.
Cindy, we have also charged people who had outstanding credit up to a point, but then failed to pay, and they had their water shut off. We've charged them a new account charge, haven't we?
What we do is
Many
if
exceptions.
somebody doesn't have a deposit on their account, and yes, their account is shut off, at that point, we consider them a risk to the city, and we have charged the deposit. A little over a year ago, I received a different direction on that one, and so on those days, we have not been collecting the deposit on shut-off day, which is something we need to do revisit again. But so, yes, for the most part. And we had talked about the reason that it's easier for us to charge deposits up front, because if we are collecting deposits for most everybody, giving them no deposit, and then when they do get shut off, when we're charging them a deposit, that's a much harder thing for the people, as they have to come up with past due amounts plus a deposit at that time. So that's one of the options we had stayed away from and decided to go with. It's easier to have a deposit at the start of the account.
Chris?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay.
Go ahead, do it.
Go ahead.
I make a motion that we deny the $150 refund for the applicant, and that we revisit the ordinance to look at clarity of language and any other questions that staff asks us to consider.
Second.
We have a motion by Stevens and a second by Ortega. Connie, would you call the roll?
Stevens,
Yes.
Ortega,
Yes.
Cheatham,
Yes.
Lurick,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes. Okay, it's back to you, Elaine.
Okay. Agenda item number 9 is trade and purchase of firearms police. Council may wish to consider the Pocatello Police Department's recommendation and accept a quote from Salt Lake Wholesale for the following firearms. The firearms will be used by members of the Pocatello Police Department. A, trade in 14 older Glock 30 and 6 Glock 21 firearms, and if approved, B, purchase 14 new Glock 19 and 6 Glock 17 handguns. Staff can purchase the new Glock handguns at a discounted rate of $236 per gun. Total purchase cost will be $4,720. Funds are available in the police department's fiscal year 2020 budget. Yes.
I move that we approve the trade and purchase of the firearms for the police department.
Second.
We have a motion by Bray and a second by Cheatham. Connie, will you please call the roll?
Gray,
Yes.
Cheatham,
Yes.
Lurick,
Yes.
Ortega,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Addison,
Yes. Agenda item number 10, sole source declaration police vehicle purchase lease. Council may wish to accept the recommendation of police staff and declare Bancor as a sole source vendor for the following requests. A, approve the lease of 10 2020 Ford F-150 fully equipped Pursuit pickups from Bancor for 5 annual payments of $144,300. And B, approve the purchase of 3 2020 Ford Explorer hybrids from Bancor in the amount of $38,484 each. Total cost $115,452. Bancorp provides a turnkey service, which means they will upfit the vehicles with all of the necessary equipment and deliver them ready to use. Funds for the vehicle lease and purchase are available in the Police Department's fiscal year 2020 budget.
Madam Chair. I would move for approval of agenda item number 10. First is sole source declaration as Bancorp as a sole source vendor for item A, approving the lease of 10 2020 Ford F-150 fully equipped Pursuit pickups from Bancorp. And item B, approving the purchase of 3 2020 Ford Explorer hybrids from Bancorp.
Second.
We have a motion by Cheatham and a second by Stevens. Connie, would you please call the roll?
Cheatham,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lurick,
Yes.
Ortega,
Yes.
Adamson.
Yes. Agenda item number 11, intergovernmental agreements, animal shelter services. Council may wish to consider the following intergovernmental agreements for the Pocatello Animal Shelter to provide shelter services subject to legal department review. A, Bannock County, B, City of Ingham, C, City of McCammon, D, City of American Falls, E, City of Downey, F, City of Chubbuck. The agreements will hold agencies outside Pocatello financially responsible for the shelter services. The agreement specifies the shelter must have room for the animal and the City of Pocatello is a priority. Councilmember.
Madam Chair.
I'm sorry.
I move that we approve this intergovernmental agreement with the 6 agencies that are listed.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Bray and a second by Ortega. Connie, will you please call the roll?
It's okay.
Gregg,
Yes.
Ortega,
Yes.
Cheatham,
Yes.
Lurick,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Adamson.
Yes. Agenda item number 12, Cell Dog Agreement, Animal Services. Council may wish to approve a cell dog agreement between Pocatello Animal Services, the Pocatello Women's Correctional Center, and the Friends of the Pocatello Animal Shelter, subject to legal department review. The Cell Dog program is a collaborative effort to allow inmates a chance to give back through the training and socialization of shelter companion animals. Responsibilities of the Pocatello Women's Correctional Center, Animal Services, and the Friends of Pocatello Animal Shelter are outlined in the agreement.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilmember Lurick.
I move that we approve agenda item number 12, a cell dog agreement between Pocatello Animal Services, the Pocatello Women's Correctional Center, and the Friends of the Pocatello Animal Shelter, subject to legal department review.
Second.
Oh, I don't know who it was. It's your call. Okay, we have a motion by Lurick and a second by Cheatham. Connie, will you please call the roll?
Lurick,
Yes.
Cheatham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Ortega,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Adamson.
Yes. Agenda item 13, acceptance of 2 canines donated to Police Department. Council may wish to consider the recommendation of staff and accept the donation of 2 canines for the Pocatello Police Department Canine Unit. Dog 1 is a German Shepherd and Dog 2 is a Yellow Lab. Both dogs will be used as explosive ordnance detection dogs. Dogs of this caliber often cost police departments upwards of $10,000 or more each to purchase. Councilmember Stevens.
Madam Chairman, I move that we accept the 2 donated canines for the police department, dogs as described in the agenda item.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Stevens and a second by Ortega. Connie, will you please call the roll?
Stevens,
Yes.
Ortega,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Cheatham,
Yes.
Lurick,
Yes.
Adamson.
Yes. Agenda item number 14, ordinances. We have an ordinance to rezone by contract approximately 2.57 acres of land located at 2909 Poline Road from commercial general to light industrial for use as industrial storage and sales pursuant to Pocatello Municipal Code 17.02.180, subject to 180, subject to conditions. Okay, council, how would you like to have the ordinance read? Councilmember Bray.
I move that we have ordinance number 14 be read only by title and placed on final passage for publication, that only the ordinance summary sheet be submitted for publication.
Second.
We have a motion by Bray and a second by Stevens. Connie, will you please call the roll?
Gregg,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Cheatham,
Yes.
Lurick,
Yes.
Ortega,
Yes.
Adamson.
Yes. Jared, will you please read the ordinance?
Sure. An ordinance of the City of Pocatello, a municipal corporation of Idaho, changing approximately 2.57 acres of land located at 2909 Poline Road, Pocatello, Bannock County, Idaho, from the zoning designation of commercial general to light industrial for use as industrial storage and cells, said property more particularly described on Exhibit A attached hereto, providing that the official zoning map be amended to incorporate this rezoning, providing for the repeal of all ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing that this ordinance shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval, and publication according to law.
Okay. I declare that to be the final reading of the ordinance. Shall the ordinance pass?
Gray,
Yes.
Cheatham,
Yes.
Lurick,
Yes.
Ortega,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Adamson.
Yes. Agenda item number 15, discussion items. This time has been set aside to hear discussion items not listed on the agenda. Items which appeared somewhere else on the agenda will not be discussed at this time. The council is not allowed to take any official action at this meeting on matters brought forward under this agenda item. Items will either be referred to the appropriate staff or scheduled on a subsequent agenda. You must sign in at the start of the meeting in order to be recognized. The total time allotted for this item is 15 minutes, and there is a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker. We have one person signed up, and that is Nikki Taysom.
Nikki Taysom, General Delivery, Pocatello, Idaho 83201. Under the 4th article of the Constitution, Section 4, it states, "The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government." We are not a democracy. In Article 6, it states, the second paragraph, "This Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuant thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land." And that means all of Congress, all of the United States. So everybody under that follows the same rule. In the 5th Amendment of the Constitution, it says, "No person nor shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation." A lot of things are being shut down because of this coronavirus threat. And the way it's been handled, it's a complete act of propaganda, commit worldwide shutdown of everything. And we're instituted in China, a communist nation that's acting against us. I mean, this is ridiculous what's happening here. And we're going by what the news are shouting out or whatever. We have people now sitting in jail who have to wait indefinitely for their court hearings to be heard. And we have schools shut down. We have all these different businesses, even government entities shutting down. Yet, we have STEM corporations that are still open. We still have bars and state-owned liquor stores and tobacco and vape shops and other entities that create a larger loss of life and freedom than this is doing. So if we're gonna do one thing, we better be just and true on the other. Because we have boys and girls sitting out in this jail, even juvenile detention with alcohol and drug addictions, who now have to sit there and wait. While those responsible for the governance, protection, safety, and our liberty allow the very things to be sold that cause this problem. And using our taxpayer dollars to do it, creating state-owned liquor stores, state-owned hops, pellet plant and brewery, state-owned lotteries, that create this nightmare we're in. I mean, we've had Zika, we've had Ebola, we've had influenza, polio. All of these things have been acts of literally biological chemical warfare or scare tactics to create the very nightmare we're in right now. In regards to taxation, I have watched the transit system here since 2011. It has averaged literally between $250,000 to $500,000 in the whole a month. That's our public tax dollars. I don't care if it's federal, city, state, whatever. It's still our funds that are being blown away.
Nikki, your time is up. Thank you very much for coming and addressing us
Uphold and
tonight.
defend the Constitution, our life and liberty.
Thank you, Nikki.
Okay. That is our last person that is signed up, so our meeting is adjourned.